So, folks, we gotta talk about this voter law that got struck down. You might have heard of it, the Voting Rights Act. Basically, what prevents the United States from being an apartheid system. What ended Jim Crow in this country? Yeah, well, the Supreme Court of the United States killed that, and there's a bunch of nuanced takes on it. So I thought we'd go take a look. There aren't nuanced takes on it, but I thought we'd go look and see what Krystal and Saagar have to say about the death of the Voting Rights Act. Let's jump into it, shall we?
Make sure that we cover this Supreme Court decision, which I think could be very significant. Let's put this up on the screen. So this is a real curtailing of the some aspects of the Voting Rights Act, in particular, the drawing of these majority-minority districts to make sure there is Black representation is most significant in the South. And the Supreme Court kind of split the difference, or they tried to sort of split the difference in terms of their decision. But it still looks like the outcome is going to be fairly significant in the ability of states, and it was Louisiana's map that was being challenged in particular, and the ability of southern states to redraw their maps and eliminate their majority-minority districts. So the Cook Political Report analyzed what the impact would be, along with Larry Sabato's Krystal Ball, which is published by University of Virginia Center for Politics. And they both estimated that this could result in roughly 7 House seats shifting to the GOP. So, the redistricting wars are fully on, launched, of course, by Trump originally. You've had California and Virginia, I think a couple other blue states, that are redrawing their maps to optimize for Democrats. There are some other states, like Illinois is one that hasn't gone yet, that could do that. Apparently, there's a possible New York gerrymander. So there are some compensating moves that Democrats could make, but obviously this is a significant win for Republicans in terms of trying to redraw the maps to be more favorable to them. And it also, in a lot of these states will effectively cement like one-party control. In a lot of these states, the only district that Democrats win are these majority-minority districts that have been, have been protected by the Voting Rights Act.
I'm curious how you feel about it, because on the merits, it's a ridiculous policy, because the policy stems from the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And not to get too granular, because I spent a lot of time actually reading about this.
Gotta get so granular, Saagar.
This voting rights provision when I was doing a lot of research on affirmative action.
Yeah.
The principle of American jurisprudence is that you have to prove intent. Now, the Voting Rights Act actually obfuscates the proven racial discrimination and assumes racial discrimination on the basis of something called dilution. Dilution says that the mere presence of minority populations there without representation is evidence of discrimination itself.
Yeah. Because it was passed during the 1960s, after like 60 plus years of Jim Crow. Yeah, they had to talk about it this way because no politician, even during like Jim Crow, was going out and saying, yeah, I hate Black people and they should be disenfranchised. No one was doing that because no one is that stupid, even in politics. So the problem with proving intent is that it is incredibly difficult unless you have some pretty explicit cases of someone saying, definitively proving that they have racist intent. Like, I've been on the internet, right? I've had this internet show around for a while. And like when I was just starting out, especially, there would be white supremacists. I was on like the panel show debate circuits and stuff. But like people would want to like debate me or whatever. And that means I've talked to a lot of like white nationalists. I've talked to like a lot of, people who are essentially just a hair's breadth away from being a KKK member. Or having all the same positions and just not being part of the group. And I can tell you that every single one of those guys, without fail, they'd be like, well, I'm a race realist, but I'm not a racist. Or they'd say, oh, well, yeah, I'm a white nationalist, but I'm not racist. But the most common thing they would say is, I'm a moderate Republican. And then you talk to them for like 30 minutes and they would eventually, it's like, well, yeah, I am a fascist, and like, et cetera, et cetera. Like, they very rarely are going to just come right out and be like, hello, I'm a racist. Like, they don't do that. And like, that goes doubly so for people who are running for office.
Not that you have to prove said discrimination. Now, if I put myself in the minds of a lawmaker 81 years ago, literally when the law was passed, I could understand that in the era of Jim Crow. But 81 years later, here in 2026, or sorry, 61 years, I don't know why I said 81 years, 61 years later, I'm sorry, like, that is a ludicrous proposition. Like,
is it? Because immediately after this got struck down, now granted, this is from 3 days ago, so, he's not operating with the up to the minute data that we are here 3 days later, but every southern state has moved to redistrict and eliminate any of the Democratic districts. And not one of them is saying, because we want to disenfranchise black people. They're saying, we just want to have maps that lean Republican, which in turn means that they have to dilute the vote of African Americans to effectively split it in so many different ways that it becomes meaningless. That, for example, Memphis, Tennessee is home to 50% of Tennessee's black population because even though they are all overwhelmingly Democrat, if you split it up enough, well, you basically eliminate any kind of representation in the government for those people who are overwhelmingly Democrat, who just so happen to be black, right? That's the entire point, which is the reason the Voting Rights Act was written in that way is because they knew when they wrote that law that Republicans would be saying, well, we're not redistricting on the basis of race. We're redistricting on the basis of political expediency, on the basis of political party. Except that in the South, political party and race are heavily, heavily correlated. So, like, Saagar is already being deeply, deeply fallacious in his defense, and we're like only like a minute into him talking.
It is a total violation, in my opinion, of the Equal Protection Clause. And I would give, for all the liberals who are hyperventilating about this, I live in Virginia, which is
Nobody goes around saying, hello, kids. I'm John Racist, the inventor of racism. They write laws that have the effect of racism.
Yep, exactly. The intention of the Voting Rights Act was to look at the effects, not the intentions, because they found racists were way too slippery with portraying their intentions.
54-45 in terms of Trump. What did Virginia just do to our maps? They just nuked all conservative representations. They're going to be a 10-1 in terms of Democrat to Republican. I don't hear you crowing about my minority rights.
Yeah, who started this fight? The entire question around who started the partisan gerrymandering, Donald Trump ordered Texas to do a mid-decade redistricting, and Texas did it. And because Texas did that, and other states, and other Republicans run states started doing that, Democratic states responded in kind. You have played a stupid game, and you have gotten a stupid prize. And like, the reality is, Democrats routinely offer to make partisan gerrymandering illegal, and Republicans routinely deny any effort to render it illegal. So when you look at the issue as a whole, it turns out you have a fight entirely set up by Republicans, initiated by Republicans, and continued by Republicans, escalated by Republicans, and like, that's why we are where we are right now. And yes, of course, we are now living in a moment where the Virginia State Supreme Court denied the partisan gerrymandering in Virginia on the basis of timing, i.e., like essentially saying, Virginia should have started the redistricting process 2 weeks earlier. But like Virginia could still do pull some shenanigans to get some redistricting done, but it would be very outside the political norms. We'll see if Democrats have the spine to do that, I guess.
My ability to represent myself, or the dilutive effect of me living in a plus 80, city. Like, I just think look, I'm not trying to be glib, but it's pretty obvious this is a black carve-out from 1965, which, in my opinion...
It's a black carve-out from 1965. Other groups benefit from the Voting Rights Act of 1965. See, for example, white rural voters in California. Man, Saagar is such a racist little whiny fascist. I cannot understand how people on this show put up with him.
Totally violates the spirit of the Equal Protection Clause. The Supreme Court, Justice Alito, you should read his decision. What he said was that you have to prove racial discrimination. And you can't assume murder. You can't assume intent in anything in American law, except here in the South, which, again,
except the Voting Rights Act applied to not just the South. It applied to the entire country.
Except that we needed some sort of post-civil rights settlement to force Jim Crow states to basically not discriminate against black people. But I'm living in a world where Georgia has 2 Democratic senators after our Democratic president just said that they were enacting new Jim Crow as of 2022, which obviously is bullshit and incendiary. So I don't know. Like,
the Voting Rights Act is the only thing that ended Jim Crow. They just killed it, man.
Look, maybe a lot of liberals would get mad at me, but like, at the spirit of the law, it's just not right. And especially whenever you're looking at what Virginia just did, you're all celebrating over that one. You don't care about minority representation.
The Virginia's direct retaliation for what was done in Texas.
But that's what I'm saying, is that nobody gives a shit about minority representation whenever it comes to their side. It's only here because they're like, because of a historic black population. Yeah. But if you can't prove explicit racial discrimination, like, you can't just assume it.
It's very difficult, I think, to prove.
Saagar Enjeti is just like one of the ultimate racism defenders. Like, his job is literally to be stupid. I mean, his job isn't to be stupid. His job is to feign ignorance so as to provide an intellectual bulwark for cowardly Republican ideology. Like, that's it, right? Like, he acts as an agent of plausible deniability. And I think that this is actually like a key component of a lot of conservative media figures, which is that, even if you're looking at Bill O'Reilly, if you're looking at, Jesse Waters, Ben Shapiro, etc., their job is to build an intellectual framework to dodge accountability.
Is wild on that show.
It really is, Sake. It's been a while since we checked in with Breaking Points, but like, Breaking Points fucking breaks me, man. Like, you don't actually have to do a show where you platform a Weasley fascist like half the time. You don't have to do that.
Explicit discrimination, which is why this was crafted the way that it was. I mean, I think you and I probably have a different view of how prominent and significant racism against Black Americans in particular still continues to be, and especially in the South, which is probably why we come down in a different place. I see your point, though. I mean, one thing I will say is that the way that these districts operate is you end up with these very like machine Black politicians that are very, the Jim Clyburns of the world that are very like dedicated to the party apparatus and never step outside of that, and tend to be some of the most significant enforcers of like the pro-corporate status quo.
I'm glad you said
in
that.
the Democratic.
That was going to be my next.
In the Democratic.
Yeah, but also that's not unique to like Southern Democrats. A lot of Democrats across the country all like are taking money from different corporations and being bought. Like, that's not a unique phenomenon in the South.
Caucus, which is very unfortunate. I will say though that I think to wipe out effectively all Black representation in the South is like I oppose that, and I think that is a setback.
Didn't you support the Virginia thing? You just wiped out I-Republican support in Virginia. We literally live in an occupied state now. If you have no, it's true.
We literally live in an occupied state now because of Republican actions.
You shouldn't need a crystal ball to understand why platforming and abating fascism is bad.
True, Sake. Too true. What you really need is a Google debunker.
Google debunkers.
That's true. Milo will tell you that fascists are bad and whiny little piss babies. But again, so what Saagar's doing is also what Ezra Klein does. They even use the same word, granular. Which it's hard for me to hear that and not think of Ezra Klein. I feel like that man said granular so much it's become a meme. But what Saagar is doing here is zooming down and ignoring the context, right? Krystal brings up, what Virginia did is in response directly to what Texas did. And he just kind of well, of course, and then moved on very quickly, right? And that's an issue because the entire way you view what is happening in Virginia and what happened in Virginia via the redistricting attempt, and that changes it depending on the context. If you are just looking at it as an isolated state, nothing else is happening around it, then obviously redistricting and gerrymandering is bad, because it is bad. It is unhealthy for democracy to do gerrymandering. But when you zoom out and you see that Virginia is just one piece of the puzzle, and you see that actually Donald Trump, a fascist in the White House, ordered Texas to redistrict in order to give himself more seats in Congress and maintain control of Congress after the 2026 midterms, then you start to understand that, actually, this was done in direct response to what Texas did, which also, again, started this disenfranchisement back and forth, right? And what the entirety of the South is now doing is, on Donald Trump's orders, disenfranchising Black voters across the entirety of the old Confederacy, right? And that is a direct downstream result of these Republican toadies being kowtowing to fascism, as it's called in some places. It's very frustrating to me to see an entire audience get the wool pulled over their eyes on this, because it's deeply, deeply disingenuous.
Listen,
direction of California.
There is no
one
doubt
cares about Republicans in California.
There is no doubt that we are in just a total race to the bottom in terms, and that was kicked off by Trump. It's
kicked off by Trump. Trump also wined and dined the Supreme Court justices the night before they dropped the Calais decision that gutted the Voting Rights Act. This was all put together by the Republican Party and Donald Trump, and there's no real other way to frame it, because Democrats, even right now, have an open offer to make partisan gerrymandering illegal. So, which kind of destroys all of Saagar's point. If but the Democrats, they don't care about partisan gerrymandering. Democrats have a bill available right now that Republicans can sign on to end partisan gerrymandering. Republicans have voted down such proposals in the past multiple times.
Escalated by Trump. I shouldn't say it's kicked off by Trump.
Yes.
Now, I will also say Democrats have offered a nationwide anti-gerrymandering law that Republicans are opposed to.
Fair.
So, happy to pass that legislation
Good job,
and have
Krystal.
fair districts drawn across the country. And I absolutely think that that would be a better result overall and guarantee that, that all groups receive the level of representation that they should have. But no, I mean, on the merits, do I think this was a positive decision in terms of small d Democratic representation in the country? No, I do not.
But see, that's where I have to disagree. Like the idea of dilution in and of itself, that some one district, just because they are black, they deserve a special carve out. It does not apply.
It's not a special carve out for specifically black people. It applies to other groups.
Apply to anybody else in the whole nation. It's an explicit era of Jim.
Yeah, because we have an explicit history in the country, Saagar, that continues to loom large over our politics.
It's been 61 years. Then why don't you support affirmative action? It's been 61 years. We don't have these explicit racial carve-outs anymore. We are trying to live up to the spirit of equal protection. This is explicitly created and directed at the South.
Like, the other part of it that bothers me, right, is that a lot of what Calais overturned was specifically Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. And, like, Section 2 prohibits, like, any voting practice or procedure that discriminates on the basis of race, color, or language minority status. And, like, he's like, I don't think we need that anymore. And that seems just facially racist. Like, sorry.
Again, I totally get back in 1965, but it's 2026. If you want to live in a country...
Yeah, we don't need civil rights in 2026. Not like there are masked men on the street disappearing people on the basis of their race or the language they're speaking. No, sir. Not like there are any masked men roaming the streets in your neighborhood to, like, steal your neighbors, steal your kids.
Where you have equal protection and application of said law for all racial groups, then this directly violates that, because now they, like everybody else, have to prove the intention of...
Does he think all black people are Democrats or something? I mean, in the South specifically, there is a huge correlation between being black and being a Democrat. So, like, when the Republicans target predominantly black areas, they are reasonably sure that the people that they are, putting into the district are Democrats. So, yeah, Saagar is explicitly defending, like, racism and racist redistricting policies here.
Of discrimination. And in the same spirit, like, can I prove that Democrats wanted to disinform?
I mean, he's either being mind-blowingly naive or letting racism make his arguments. Well, that's the thing, right? The affected naivete is the defense for racism, right? Because, like, he's basically trying to intellectualize his weaponized naivete, right? Like, he's trying to make it seem reasonable to openly embrace a naive understanding of politics and race in this country, with the in the same way that John Roberts tried to push it in his ruling on Calais, which is essentially like, it's 2026, racism is done, So what he's doing is weaponizing that naivete that John Roberts put out there. And just also want to point out, John Roberts apparently was caught, like, using AI and fudging numbers in his Voting Rights Act decision, which honestly, under normal circumstances should probably get him, like, impeached and removed from the court, and it should be like a colossal scandal. But, like, you'll barely hear a peep about it, honestly. It's just another day in Trump's America.
Franchise all the Republicans in Virginia? I mean, honestly, probably at this point.
I mean, but that's the same.
But they don't care. Like, that's what I'm saying. They don't care at all. So, like, don't come crying. Like, look, you're looking at it in in the what is it, in the interim, like this race, in terms of like this particular race, in the long run, I think it's a better off decision because it creates.
God, it is wild to me to listen to this man defend one of the worst Supreme Court rulings since Dred Scott. Like, it's genuinely insane. I mean, like, it's wild to me. John Roberts' effort to gut the Voting Rights Act is complete. And like, Saagar's just like, yeah, that's great. It's wonderful to allow racial discrimination in voting, in voting practices. That it's the best.
It's a legal justification that anybody, whenever you have to prove discrimination, you have to explicitly be able to prove it. You and I benefit from this when it comes to defamation law. All Americans benefit from this whenever it comes to, I'm trying to think, like anytime you're criminally accused or of anything, even whenever it comes to really not from heinous crime to the presumption of innocence. It's like a basic bedrock of American society. Now, as I've said, I totally understand why in the era of Jim Crow that you would want to put something like this in place. Mm-hmm. But when Georgia is a swing state, I'm sorry, which was the capital, like the beating heart of the Confederate, like, what's the lost cause ideology in Senator Richard Russell, who was the chief opponent. And when his predecessors are now literal, one of them was a black Democrat, I just don't buy it anymore. Like, I just think it's a long relic. And my final point was on the machine thing. And I got into my argument with the father-in-law over this because he was talking explicitly about representation, like the skin color of the person who is representative. Mm-hmm. And I was trying to make this point. I said, the Congressional Black Caucus is one of the most machine-captured and pro-corporate lobbies in all of Washington. This is a well-known fact. And it's like, has it really worked out necessarily to the benefit? I mean, I understand this. Like, I don't need an Indian person to represent my interests. My interests are my interests.
But I would say they are much better than a Republican in the same district.
Okay.
On the merits, in terms of what they will vote for.
I can't handle Saagar. I can't. He hurts me. He hurts me. Like, he'll be like, well, did you know that the Congressional Black Caucus is one of the most corporate captured parts of the Democratic establishment? Huh, I bet you didn't know that, did you? And then Krystal will be like, okay, but also they're less corporate captured than Republicans in the same district in like the areas around them. And he'll just be like, well, okay. And just like, yeah. Like, Republicans on every metric that Saagar pretends to care about are worse. Georgia's a swing state, went Democrat once in 30 years, twice in the past 40, but sure. Yeah, exactly.
And I, at the risk of like repeating myself, I just think our difference comes down to, you say you can understand why this was put in place when it was, given the level of racism, et cetera. And I just continue to see a level of racism that continues to justify this level of protection and see it as a loss that black voters throughout the South, are basically going to lose, their congressional representation.
I mean, and they're going to be living off redlining until 2200. It's just.
Oh my God. They're going to be living off of redlining until 2200. My guy. Redlining kept happening until within your lifetime. Like there are entire sections of cities that are predominantly black because of redlining. Like, and Coder Joe, it definitely still happens. Like, it's still a systemic problem, and the legacy of it is going to be like baked in for a very long time. Like, redlining indelibly shaped a lot of the cities across America. It's why we have even certain idioms like the wrong side, like the wrong side of the tracks or the other side of the tracks. I'm from Oklahoma. There's definitely black towns. There are, like, I live in Minnesota, and there are definitely cities and neighborhoods in Minnesota to this day that still have, like, parts of, like, the homeowners agreements that, like, talk about, like, not selling to, like, minorities. They're not enforceable or enforced anymore, but they're still there. It's still baked into a lot of the makeup of different neighborhoods, especially out in the suburbs. That's a huge part of, like, dealing with the legacy of the racism that came before us, which is that we need to undo those systems. We need to seek to, like, rectify that which was wrong. Yeah, exactly, Coder Joe. Notes like that on the land deeds. Yep. Yeah. Like, I mean, it's part of why you can go into different parts of town, right? And depending on your skin color, like, depending on, like, if you have like dark skin or like light dark skin, like, the element of, like, colorism is at play. But, like, depending on what stores you go into and what parts of town, like, people are more or less likely to call the cops on you, even if you're not doing anything wrong, right? Like, there are certain suburbs in Minnesota where, like, if you are black or brown and you go into a store, like, someone's just gonna notice your skin color and follow you along, follow you around, and maybe call the cops on you. Like, yeah, no, exactly, Max Danger. There are still sundown towns in America. Oh, they're going to be living off of redlining until 2200.
It's one of those where, like, look, we live in an evolving society, which everybody can understand.
Yeah, I mean, like, there was, exactly, Brutus Magnuson. There was that lady who called, like, a fucking toddler the N-word on camera.
Whenever it comes to social justice, but apparently, like, the sins of 100 years ago are never ever forgotten.
It's not the sins of 100 years ago. I mean, we've had,
60 years.
But I think you have to acknowledge, like, racism is still a real matter. You can look at wealth disparities, you can look at outcome disparities, you can look at health disparities. Basically, anywhere you look in terms of American,
it all breaks down.
Some of it is class-based, but some of it is also over racial discrimination, and we have a long history of that. And that doesn't, it doesn't just vanish over,
the thing that always bothers me is that, like, Saagar will go on an incredibly racist rant, and then Krystal will start talking and be like, well, and racism doesn't just vanish overnight. Like, we live with that legacy. And he's just like, right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. If you recognize that the things she's saying are correct, then how the fuck could you say the things you just said? I do. Superjet Guy, writes, honest question, why does Krystal Ball continue to work with this whiny bitch that claims to be my kin? I do not know. I don't know, other than, like, a legacy association. Money, probably. But, like, I couldn't do what she does.
Truly, in terms of the grand scheme of time, like, a few decades is a very short period of time. Just the decade before I was born was all the debates about busing, and, like, that's when desegregation was. This is very recent in terms of a historical scale, and the legacy still continues, in my opinion. So
I can understand that view, and I get how it's a liberal headline. Like,
I get it.
Voting Rights Act struck down, but, like, I beg you, grapple with the points that I made, because I don't really I see people hyperventilating about it, but absolute refusal to apply it to literally any other group, which, again, you don't care at all about minority representation, especially in the wake.
Again, Republicans don't and started this. Republicans are the ones who refuse to end partisan gerrymandering. Republicans are the ones who are rushing to do the racialized gerrymandering. Again, don't pretend like Republicans are championing either of these things when they're starting it and continuing to do it.
Of Virginia, you happen to care whenever you can dress it up as some sort of, like, civil rights era cause, but that's not how U.S. jurisprudence works. Like, the law.
But also, like, here's the thing, right? Like, Saagar's like, you don't really care. If you really cared, you wouldn't redistrict, and only Republicans would redistrict. And like, that's a losing strategy. The reason he's really worked up about this, and the reason a lot of Republicans are really worked up about this, is because Democrats actually did something in response. Democrats actually said, okay, you're engaging in a gerrymander war. The only play we have is to gerrymander you guys right back. And so we're going to keep doing that and escalating it and see how that works out for you. And you can come to us and we'll work with you at any time on a partisan gerrymandering bill to put an end to this nonsense. And Republicans are going to insist on doubling, tripling, and quadrupling down until suddenly they are in a losing position when it comes to gerrymandering. That is what this is going to take. It is going to take a race to the bottom, and in a race to the bottom, Democrats win. It's just a question of how much damage are Republicans going to do in the meantime. It also means, by the way, that any state with like split legislatures, the effort needs to go towards organizing on the local and the state level so that we can actually, as Democrats, as people on the left, take over those state legislatures and win the gerrymander war. Like, that's what it's going to take. And I can assure you that if Republicans win the gerrymander war, we're all fucked. Like, if Republicans win the gerrymander war, we're all screwed. If Democrats win the gerrymander war, there's a hand extended out to Republicans to end partisan gerrymandering forever. The only way out of this is for Democrats to win and then make partisan gerrymandering illegal. That is it. That is the only way out, as far as I see it. Not that they deserve that hand, no, but also, like, we do deserve, all of us, to live in an actual democracy. To inject a little hope, gerrymandering might backfire in a wave election year. That's also true. Like, I have to imagine a lot of this Southern gerrymandering is going to widely activate the Democratic base in a way that it has not been activated before in a very, very long time. And I think a lot of people who don't typically show up to the polls are going to, in the wake of this racial gerrymandering.
Explicitly says that we should not be discriminated based upon our race, and to have explicit racial carve-outs is just not really something that we should have anymore in the year 2026. That's why I support the
Mississippi and other southern states literally still celebrate a Confederate Memorial Day, so that's where we still are.
Okay.
I mean, I
don't think it's a good thing.
I know, but I'm just saying the notion. Oh, these are all colorblind.
Maybe they celebrate Confederate Memorial Day not racistly. You know, they just really love a lot of the other aspects of the Confederacy that weren't about racism.
On Utopia's I just think that defies the reality of
you know, maybe they just enjoyed all of the expanded rights behind the Confederacy. The right to do what? You know, the additional rights that they had in the Confederacy that they didn't have when they were part of the Union. Okay, but the right to do what, though? Next question.
What it is like in most of these deeply southern
I was
states.
raised in the South, so first of all, in literally Confederate state. So, it's not like I'm not exactly familiar with Confederate or Lost Cause ideology. Mm-hmm. However,
you might want to familiarize yourself with it before you start flapping your gums, then.
I've also watched my state go from 1990s, where something like that could have happened, where now, as you just said, James Tallarico is polling in a place where he might win the entire state. So,
right. Although Texas is a little bit different than Mississippi, Alabama, just in terms of both the demographic makeup and also the massive influx of Californians who have moved to
That's
Texas.
Fair. Yeah. Well, you know what I would say?
And Georgia also has been a beacon for people moving in from out of state, so maybe that's which really changed the character of the state.
Which is maybe that's the fault of Mississippi and Alabama for not becoming a more attractive place. I'm joking, okay? So it's one of those where, at the end of the day, what I think is equal application of the law, is not based on your skin, is the most important bedrock principle. I think it when it comes to affirmative action, and I think it whenever it comes to Voting Rights Act. Yes, it will in immediate term, it will affect so-called minority representation in these states, but we don't do that in literally any other case. And we should make.
I'm sorry. The idea that like Memphis, which is home to 50% of the black population of Tennessee, should have its black representation removed by gerrymandering, and it's somehow not racist. That's just insane, my guy. You are fucking insane. Like, it's deeply insulting to the intelligence of anyone who watches Breaking Points that they have to put up with this clown.
Make it so that that is what you strive for across the board, including, yes, gerrymandering, which obviously many Republicans in these states thought would use to their advantage. I actually still don't really fully buy, not to just drag this out too much, but I still don't fully buy that the gerrymandering, even with these 7 seats that will go up, will still net out in some sort of Republican favor. Because
I think,
I mean, when you rig the game, it is still possible to lose occasionally, but like, you've systematically rigged it in your favor. Like, it might not 100% go in your favor, but even if it goes 80% in your favor, like, you still picked up a few seats. That still means something when we're looking at the makeup of Congress.
it's still very much, it's hard to say.
Right, because I was looking, at approval ratings. Clinton had like a 50% approval rating and also lost.
I have to imagine Saagar and Kyle Kulinski have had some fun convos. I have to imagine that they don't have conversations because I find it unbelievable to assume that Kyle Kulinski could talk to Saagar Enjeti for a prolonged period of time and not get into a fist fight with him.
Like 52 seats in 1994.
Yeah.
Trump is at an all-time low bottom. So even in a gerrymandered world,
I think Democrats are still going to take the House. I just think it will be a smaller margin.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, I'd seen people be like, "Oh my God, we're not even going to win now." I'm like, really? Like, I just don't think you're really right.
I think it's going to be too big to rig, Saagar. That's what I think.
You might be right. Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button.
I just, man, that was. We've watched a lot of terrible things tonight, and I've talked about a lot of terrible things tonight. That was genuinely disheartening to watch that man cling to and defend the most racist elements of our society. Like, the Voting Rights Act is the one thing that it separated us from, like, the Jim Crow era, and like Saagar Enjeti defending that, it genuinely boggles my mind. Anyway, if you want to make sure no one like Saagar Enjeti gets into our politics, gets into your political local ecosystem, then join your local Dems, join your local DSA, organize, folks, organize, because, folks, when you come together in your local community, you can keep it safe from AI data centers, you can keep it safe from ICE, you can keep it safe in 100 different ways, and you can make your community better and stronger and safer and cooler and have more opportunity in it. It's really cool. You can do so much when you get involved, and we can also defend our democracy together. We can push for voting rights. We can push for fixing this shit. Okay? So join your local Dems, join your local DSA, make your DSA more effective. If you need help getting started doing either of those things, join our Discord, reach out to Dragonfly for help with your local Dems, reach out to GamerG for help with your local DSA. We want to get you involved in organizing, and we're here to help you take your first steps. Also, folks, if you got anything out of this, hit the like button, subscribe, leave a comment. Comments longer than 8 words really help in the algorithm. And also, do consider checking out ImogeneOlivia.com, gender euphoric lingerie designed from the ground up for trans femmes. Also tested with cis men, cis women, non-binary folks. It is comfortable, sexy lingerie that is non-tucking. Go check it out. Link down in the description. Let's keep on going.
Riverboat deck is coming to town. All the viewers gather around. Twitch and YouTube every swishy streams. All that content is bursting the seams. Politics, being and plenty more. Your sense of fashion you'll adore. So grab your stuff and hop aboard. We're going